Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. It has been an awesome week. Hey, the Super League playoffs, they are officially happening next week. We have some Jaeger Bombs that happen. Of course, that is our word for upsets. Thank you, Internet, for coming up with that one. We appreciate you. And John, you're back. How was Phoenix? How are you?
Yeah, Phoenix was good. Nice to see a lot of people in and around the Rising community take in that game against New Mexico, but excited to be back on the grind.
I mean, are you really excited to be back on the grind, or do you feel like you have to say that for legal reasons?
I mean, I worked myself to death while I was on vacation, so it's all kind of the same.
That's fair. Listen, there's a whole lot of news we'll get into. We'll talk about Oakland and their fire and hire. We'll get into the Super League. We'll give you a full playoff preview for this week before we get into the finals next week. We'll talk about some Jaegermeister Cup. We have a whole lot coming at you, but we do, of course, need to thank our patrons as I am trying to get that list up, and I will do so just shortly because I'm a great podcaster. Here we go. Dylan Reed, William Lynn, Sandy Lester, Ryan Smelter, Matt Cat Peel, Timothy Meadows, All the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MLS, NF 30, Tim Notch, Rian Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you so much for supporting us, supporting everything that we do. We obviously have our live show going up next month in Portland, Maine. We can't confirm if we are getting the tattoos, but we might be able to talk Ryan into doing it. No confirmation on that yet. A whole lot that we are just so excited to do. So we have the Super League and the playoffs are here. We have our playoff matchups of Dallas is taking on Carolina being the Players Show winner. And then we have Fort Lauderdale taking on Tampa Bay hosting. This was an intense last day where we have Fort Lauderdale gets in and Dallas get on the last day. Dallas beats Carolina, and you end up getting a draw that sees Spokane out because of a head-to-head matchup back up in December. It could not get any more just dramatic than it did. For us who were able to watch those matches, just kind of talk about the drama of the day because it was fun.
No, I mean, you think about the way it all broke down, Spokane needing that result, and they concede within a couple of minutes against really what was a bad one-on-one matchup against Shania Gordon. You really hated to see it for Spokane, who's had such a consistent backline throughout this season and needed that result. And they were straight up the better team in this game. I thought the combination play that you got from Emma Jaskinek kind of dropping in as a pseudo false nine-ish 10 in combo with Ali Cook was really effective. Obviously, Ekic and Weiner were bringing it. A shame for them to not get over the line. But credit Dallas. Obviously, the Ascent didn't come into that matchup needing any points. Dallas was pretty bold about the way they shaped themselves up in the 4-4-2, kind of 4-2-2 with that hexagonal midfield. I thought using Sierra Hinson continually, instead of as a forward like we saw early in the year, getting her at left back and letting her combine with Obagagu on that side, really effective. Amber Brooks was great in the midfield. They did everything right to get the 3 points they needed. But yeah, killer final day for the league.
Quick correction, as I'll let you talk in a second, Ryan. Hi, nice to see you, buddy. I was wrong. Nicholas Murray corrected me in the chat. It is Carolina versus Fort Lauderdale, Tampa Bay versus Dallas. I forgot that Dallas jumped up to 3 despite being outside the playoffs before the day began. Absolute insanity. Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about just the insanity of the final day. The timing of it was just really fascinating to watch, knowing that Dallas had the lead going into halftime of their match. And with the start of the Spokane-Fort Lauderdale game, him having both of those goals very early, it made the dynamic of watching those games kind of play out in front of us really interesting. And just as John said, credit to Dallas for jumping into a playoff spot, setting up a really good game against Tampa Bay. And I know it didn't have an impact on the playoff picture, but it reminded me of a West Brom Manchester United when it was 4-4 on the final day of just Lexington and DC Power finishing 3-3 in their final match played against each other, which was just absolutely wild.
Yeah, DC missing a lot of players to international duty. Lexington finally gets a little bit of scoring, just finally able to do it. And you were happy for Lexington fans. They finally get a result. DC Power kind of had their turnaround a few weeks ago, but you're really happy for Lexington to see what they can do. Oliver, I want to ask you a quick question. And it's all about we talked to Super League President Amanda Vandervoort last week. It was a really fun conversation. The one thing that stood out to me, though, is when I talked about the playoff picture, she said consistency. That the league being split up into two different splits, it was all about consistency. The most consistent teams won. And to start the season, Spokane was frankly having awful results with good processes, awful results. Towards the end of the year, they figure it out, good results with a good process. But the very last day, it comes down to a 2-1 loss in December. You mentioned it earlier about how Loudoun missed the playoffs, but you still felt like it was a good season. How would you feel, going into a situation like Spokane's in, where they had good processes all year long? It didn't work early. You're out because of a head-to-head matchup tied on points. How would you kind of reconcile with something like that?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to take the emotion out of it. And obviously the time is a good healer, as they say. You have to try and take the emotion of one game out of it defining your season, so if I can flick really quickly back to a scenario I'm much more in tune with, you could look at Rhode Island on the men's side from last year, incredible playoff run, all of that. But would you say Rhode Island were the second best team in USL throughout the last 34 games last year or whatever it was? They were good, but probably not. They got hot in the playoffs, but ultimately a team is as good as the amount of points they rack up, and then the playoffs are a little bit more of a lottery, and that's why we felt the way we did at Loudoun, because we knew our underlying numbers over the course of the season were much better than our league position, and we were confident we were going to be a playoff team this year. So same thing over on the women's side. You have to basically say, especially if you've had a poor start to the year and a really strong second 2/3 or second half, you can go into that off season now saying, over the last 20 games, over the last 15 games, we're a playoff team. We're fine. Don't hit the panic button just because we lost on the final day and got punished by our first 8 games ever in existence when everyone was figuring out exactly what we are and who we are as a team. I don't think we've got too much need to panic here, so that's probably a scenario where, like I said, analytics maybe helps, maybe it doesn't, or just kind of looking at it quite logically. Everything should be fine heading into next year because over the last 20 games, we've been fine. We've been great. So let's focus on that.
Thinking about the Super League, obviously, it's in the very unique position that all 8 clubs were in their first year. Would taking over an expansion team and really trying to build everything from the ground up be appealing to you in the future?
Yeah, I think it would. I think sometimes an expansion team is easier than taking over a team that's existing with some existing problems. You don't have player contracts, staff contracts that are complicated. You don't have some of the history, for example, that Loudoun's had, and some of the kind of stigma around. If I take Loudoun's position, for example, it's a tough sell getting people to come to Loudoun in 2024 and even in 25 at times. We did some stuff to fix that, like I alluded to. An expansion team is a clean slate, but what you do also have is the uncertainty there, where you are you are trying to sell something that doesn't exist right now. And players are a little bit wary of that. I don't know the coach. I've never worked for the coach. I don't know the facility. I've never been to city X or Y. It's not, there's different problems that come with expansion, and you're selling a dream. You got to put together a really good PowerPoint or whatever, because there's no video to show them of this is how we're going to play or what we're going to do. There's no history. So it's a different type of challenge for sure. And you're going to get some wrong. Like if you're putting together a 20-person roster, you're not going to hit all 20 out of the park. Like no one in the world does. So it's not necessarily like, great, we got 20 shots and we're going to get 20 right and win the league. Like you're going to hit, if you do really well, you're going to hit on 13 or 14, and it's just inevitable. There's only so much due diligence you can do.
Well, let's look at these playoff matchups in particular really fast. As the Tampa Bay Sun, I want to start off with the 2-3, and that is Tampa Bay Sun versus Dallas Trinity, where the Trinity, they have Allie Thornton, Golden Boot winner. She is a certified goal scorer, but we've seen Tampa Bay be a complete team all year long. The way they press, the way that they are able to just kind of attack teams who try to build out from the back. This feels like it should be a really tough task for Dallas, arguably a more tough task than if they would have maybe drawn Carolina, whom they just defeated. John, what do you see in this matchup?
I think it's fascinating because of what you just said about Tampa Bay. It's been the consistency. They've had the vision, that really kind of hard grinding physical style from day one. It hasn't always worked out for them, but there's something to be said for trusting the process. And Dallas, they took a little bit of time to get hot. They had a great kind of winter into the break stretch. They can be explosive, but they've got a bit of versatility to them. I've mentioned up top that shift into the back four as of late versus the more 3-5-2 that they were running for most of the season. How those factors combine against one another, a team that is so malleable and has a lot of depth versus the singular vision of Tampa Bay, I think is what makes this such a compelling matchup. For me, I lean Dallas. I just trust what they've got with the midfield. I think Thornton has been terrific up top. But this of the two games feels like the more interesting one, in my view.
Ryan, how do you feel?
Yeah, if you turn it over on, I guess the Tampa Bay side of it, this is a Tampa Bay Sun team who has beaten Dallas a little less than a month ago after this match. It's going to be very interesting to see how they match up. When they had met in their 4 meetings this year, all of them were under 2.5 goals, and they were very close together. This Tampa Bay team has only lost twice here in the spring season, so we talk about having that momentum to carry them into the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting to see how they match up, and I really think just having the home field advantage is going to play a role in this match as well, that I lean more towards the Sun to get this win.
Oh, I want to ask you this question for both sides, for both teams before. You got to head out. So
no, it's okay. You can ask it, and then I'm gonna dip. So don't worry.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for hopping on again. This will be the 5th time both of these teams have played against each other. 5th time. How do you make changes to play against a team who you have played 5 times in one season?
Yeah, it's tough. I think Loudon and Louisville are going to get close to that this year.
True.
But it really depends on the past results a little bit. If you're 0-5 or 0-4, whatever. I think there was a time actually I was at the University of Virginia when they played. The women's side played Florida State in the national championship final, and I think they played them twice or 3 times already that fall and lost all of them. So they switched to like 3 at the back and did some other stuff, and they lost the game still. And Steve Swanson, the coach, was like, I had to do it. We're not going to beat them the way we've been doing it, So, but if you're maybe 2-2 or 1-3 or 3-1 and whatever, and maybe if we just play well and learn some lessons, you have to use that as motivation. It really is extremely subjective based on how the two teams match up, I would say. had some interesting time. The Canadian Premier League had 8 teams as well, right? So like there was some very interesting matchups between like Forge and Cavalry up in Canada, for example, where there was also like a very personal, deep rivalry, on the personal side of things between the two teams, which was very, very fun. So I think it depends on some of those dynamics as well about how you might motivate the group or make some changes.
Awesome. Hey, Oliver, thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate you sitting down and chatting with us. You're an absolute blast, and we seriously cannot wait to see where you end up. I was going to mention to you before show, but I want to just go ahead and mention it to you now. When you guys played Birmingham earlier on this year to start the season, I had at least 2 different players tell me just all the amazing things that you do, and they could not speak any more highly of you. So you have a lot of people who really care about you and love what you do. So we cannot wait to see where you end up.
Awesome. Well, whoever they were, please thank them, and thank you for your kind words. Working on it. I'm excited to hopefully help another USL club one day. We'll see what happens next.
Thank you, Ollie.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you do. It's sometimes it's a thankless task, and you maybe don't get as much recognition as you should. So congratulations on everything so far.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
See you guys.
See ya. I mean, he's awesome.
Truly.
So, also, I mean, listen, we've gotten in our last 2 interviews, we have gotten just things I just could not, did not expect. Like Amanda Vandervoort learning how to use TikTok, hilarious. Oliver Gage learning how to floss is awesome. So let's look at this because we are running an hour long. We have a few Jaegermeister. I went to translate in my mind. That was strange. To get into as well. Carolina sent versus Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale has a high flying attack, some interesting midfield and defensive pieces, but Carolina is the best team in the league. Do we think that Fort Lauderdale can go into Carolina and get a result in this one?
Carolina's big strength throughout the season has been their structure. It's been the 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1 for almost the entirety of the year. They've put up very good XG against numbers throughout the season because of it. That's their identity, and I trust them to execute on it. And so what does that mean in the matchup? That means that Fort Lauderdale is probably going to struggle to find Addie McCain between the lines. They're probably going to have a bad time getting those one-on-ones for Gordon and Hamid. If the Ascent can stick to what has worked and make sure that those players who can be so dangerous aren't doing what they do best, I think that's the formula. Like, you trust Mia Corbin or Aguilera or somebody is going to get a goal. That's ultimately how I see this playing out, but it's really easy to distill this into just a couple of matchups that are going to determine things.
Yeah, and if we're looking at previous games played, March 2nd, we did have Fort Lauderdale come into Carolina and walk out with a 2-1 win. It was part of that match that helped kind of spur Carolina on to having such a long run of a winning streak that they had through the month of March and April that really propelled them to being the number 1 seed here entering the playoffs. One of the things that really jumps out to me with Fort Lauderdale is they haven't had a match where they scored multiple goals and won the game since March 15th against Brooklyn. They did have that really high scoring 5-2 game where Carolina had won 5-2 in Fort Lauderdale on April 26th. So there are goals within this matchup. 3 of the 4 matchups that they've had this year have been over 2.5 goals. But I really think Fort Lauderdale needs to score twice if they want to have a chance in this one.
So if I'm reading the room correctly, we think that Carolina is going on to host the final. I also believe that as well. I believe that this is Carolina's match. So I'm going to ask a different question. Not which matchup do you think we're going to see in the final, but which would be more interesting? Would you rather watch Carolina versus Tampa Bay or Carolina versus Dallas that we just saw?
If we're going for the most fun, out of all of these possible matchups, give me Dallas against Fort Lauderdale. Those feel like
True.
the teams that have the most explosiveness. In the scenario, obviously Dallas, Carolina, but yeah, I think that Fort Lauderdale and Dallas are the most bang for your buck if you want some magic moments.
Interesting. Ryan, how about you?
It'd be quite interesting to get a Florida Derby, if you will, for the final, which would just be a really great thing for the league to market. But I think, like we've talked about it previously, you reward the full season-long effort, and I would like to rather see a Carolina-Tampa Bay final.
Yeah, I think that if I had to choose between Tampa Bay and Carolina, I think that Tampa Bay is the better team, and I do want to reward that. I like their way they play more, but also I think that Allie Thornton might just pop up with a hat trick at some point during the playoffs, whether it be in the semi or the finals. She's just that kind of player, and you want to see a player like Allie Thornton in the final. That's what you want to see. You want to see your biggest stars in the biggest moments. It seems like that's what the league would probably want in that situation. Granted, Addie McCain and Mead are also just disgustingly good. So, how about some Jaeger Bombs? How about some Jaegermeister Cup? We're going to hit these really fast because there's a lot to get through. Where, Monterey Bay takes down Spokane. That was kind of honestly a shocking result, all things considered. You would not think it would be, but it definitely was. Borderline Jaeger Bomb Cup set, despite what the leagues say.
And that was a game where Monterey scores very early. I think Pierce Galloway off a set piece.
Yes.
And then Spokane puts up 25 shots and somehow doesn't get a goal. Like, the Velocity may have lost that game, but they looked really good in the way they broke down a parked bus. Luis Heel continues to be that dude. Granted, this turned into a galvanizing moment for Monterey, who then went on and beat Orange County at the weekend. So I think that's important to note. But if you are worried about Spokane at all, don't be.
And honestly, looking at their two remaining Jaegermeister matches, you'll have at the end of June a Spokane against Las Vegas, a Las Vegas team who's lost a combined 12-1 over I think their previous 4 or 5 games played, and then Sacramento to end off the group stage. That Sacramento Spokane game on July 26th is one that everyone should be circling for this group.
Yeah. This is not quite a Jaeger bomb, but I just kind of want to bring it up where Obregon gets a penalty brace for Westchester, but I'm going to mess it. Carriega? Is that right? Yeah, Carriega?
Carriega or Carriaga. I've heard both on broadcast.
Okay. I've also heard both. I was hoping somebody would know. But he gets a brace, and then Yang gets the game winner. Hartford win 3-2. That one's a fun one. You thought that maybe Westchester kind of had the sauce. Hartford might be turning it around. Portland Hearts of Pine 4-2 over Detroit City. Possibly the upset of the round if you were to purely look at never mind. Greenville is close when you look at the position, but when you look at what Detroit City does, they were sloppy, which you don't really say about Detroit City teams. They don't do sloppy, and Portland not only was not sloppy, they made them pay.
And Detroit kind of changing shapes into more of a 4-4-2 in this game. I don't know if it was just motivated by the need to rest some guys or what have you. But boy, did Stephen Carroll and Hiroki Yamazaki, guys who haven't been in the team as of late, look honestly overmanned against the Hearts of Pine in transition. What Portland did with Azad Liadi and Nathaniel James up top was so dynamic. Like, they were killing them on the counterattack. But yeah, I don't think Danny Dicchio is going to be too stressed given what he threw into this. But take nothing away from Portland for executing to a T.
And Kushak Oladapo in goal for Portland in this match was 7 saves. He really put on a performance that very much just kind of saved the match for them. And as Nicholas Murray says in chat, Westchester just can't hold on to leads. That's 5 games in a row. They've scored the opening goal and have failed to win. And that's 6 in total on the year.
But I think for me, an expansion
bet
team
against them.
Yeah, that does make it easy for you. But if you look and you're an expansion team, you know there's going to be struggles. The fact that you're starting well and you have flashes of something, I think that's a good sign. Like, you would love to close a game at some point, but you are not fully out of the mix, just given the way that you're performing for long stretches.
I would like to give a quick, if you're in the area, go. Just kind of shout out really fast. And when we go up to Portland on July 25th, you can watch Portland Hearts of Pine take on Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh are still pointless throughout this competition. Portland has their 3 points. If they get another win, possibly 2 wins, they're in playoff contention and they're getting in on a wild card, possibly. But it's more fun at the top of Group 4 is Rhode Island Hartford. Guess what's happening the next day in Rhode Island? El Clamico. The next day. So if you want to hop on the train and go from Portland to Providence, or are they in Pawtucket? One of the two.
Pawtucket,
Rhode Island.
Pawtucket.
Yeah, if you want to go from Portland to Pawtucket, oh my God, go. You have a 2-day away day trip, and those 2 matchups are going to feed families. Did you see the crowd at Portland? Now, what do you think that's going to look like when you go to Rhode Island for El Clamico? It's going to be awesome.
No disagreement there.
A couple of other matches just to kind of talk about really fast. Greenville takes down Charleston. And I'm going to just ask the question because, yes, Charleston comes out in a bit of a rotated lineup. I understand that. Still a very, very, very good lineup. Rotated is you doing a lot of lifting there. Greenville played amazing defensively, but we've seen in both Jaegermeister Cups for Charleston, the team that's been sitting in deep and kind of hitting on a quick counter. That's how they've won with Naples. Granted, that's what Naples does. Is that the way to beat this Charleston team?
You think about the game against Hartford in the league a couple of weeks ago. Hartford gets an early goal and kind of sticks to that formula. And Charleston break them down, so it's not the golden ticket to beating the Battery. But what Naples and the Triumph have shown is that if you sit in, have those banks of 4 defensively, they're denying space well, and Charleston can't do what they do best in the open areas, hitting players in the half spaces going from there. Particularly in this matchup, I liked what Greenville did, moving Agiakwa into the midfield, getting Patty into the back line. I thought both players were good on the day, and they brought that defensive sensibility. Subbing Evan Leon as a striker at halftime, again, like doubling down on the physical presence. Rick Wright made all the good calls in this game to get the result. But yeah, Ben Pierman knows at the end of the day also that one of those shots takes a weird deflection, something clicks their way, and it's a different ball game.
And just looking ahead for Charleston within this group, they have Tormenta and Tampa Bay as their final 2 group stage games with a maximum of just 6 points left to get in. They're currently 5 points behind Miami for advancing. I'm going to be very curious how Charleston chooses to approach those games. Like this weekend, the Jaegermeister felt incredibly pivotal for a lot of teams to decide, okay, do we have a future in this competition? Is this something we still go towards? Or is this we're going to try and start rotating the squad, get our focus back onto the league competition? Because it wouldn't surprise me if Charleston would go out and win these next 2 games against Tormenta and Tampa Bay. They're teams that they very well can beat. But do they also see it as like, okay, what's the likelihood that Miami doesn't get another point or Naples doesn't win another game in front of us? Do we still kind of go after this competition knowing that we could beat these 2 teams in front of us? Or is this something that we kind of at least try and refocus our attention elsewhere?
John, I'm going to ask you a quick Greenville question. And you mentioned Agiakwa. Kind of going up and playing as the 6 in the midfield. Granted, everybody in the midfield was kind of playing as the 6 to try to defend for their lives. So grain of salt. But would you possibly just leave him there over Anguiano, who has been the other side, the pivot to Herrera all year long, but the team looked more together in this match?
It's an interesting question because Greenville traditionally always wants to be possessive. They want to be able to string passes together through the midfield. And when you've got Herrera and Anguiano, those are two very technical number 8s that can do the job. That's not to say Gyakwa doesn't have some of that passing in his back pocket, but he's fundamentally a more defensive-minded player. Given how the Triumph have been playing, I say roll with it. Like if you find a balance that maybe lets Chapa step up, maybe you can bring Anguiano in late in games and be more tactical and situational about it. That's probably not a bad thing. And more broadly, like if Greenville wants to be a counterattacking side, lean into Leo Castro as a hold-up player, let Zakowski get out in space where he is so excellent taking players on. That might be the better version of this team in spite of what their principles have been historically.
So let's go ahead and move on where I'm sorry, Lexington. I truly am. You had a great day versus DC Power. Hey, the League 2 team's doing really, really well. So go watch them. They are a really, really good squad. But we all know this. Death taxes Christian Chaney. Do a backflip, my son, because he comes in and at the last minute of the game gets his brace. Nicholas Firmino, who was our tactics player last week, gets sent off. Completely changes the game. The Independents take down Lexington, but this isn't let's laugh at Lexington. This is I want to ask the question about Charlotte and Luis Alverez, because it's being reported that he's going down to Tampa Bay, and that amazing move for Tampa Bay if that is the case. But can Charlotte keep this up without him?
It's a fascinating problem because they lost Alfredo Medense already, and he played against them in this weekend's Jaegermeister Cup match. And if you're Mike Jeffries at that point, you think, okay, cool, we still have Alvarez to be that kind of all-encompassing, ball-handling, creative player. Alvarez is the Charlotte Independents, and he has been last season and this season. Everything they do kind of runs around the gravity that he demands from opponents whenever he gets a touch. I don't know what the answer is. Rafa Joregi has shown some flashes. Obviously, Maru has been a scorer. None of them can bend a defense in the same way that Alvarez does, provide and create at multiple levels in that same way. Fundamentally, I think that Charlotte is going to have to rethink things from the bottom up because they're losing their talisman, if in fact he is going to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and if you're just looking at their next 4 games, Tormented, Spokane, Greenville, and Texoma are some of the, like, Spokane is definitely a team that is going to really test this new look independent side if he leaves the club prior to that match. But you have Tormenta, you have Texoma in there to provide like other opportunities to try and kind of like have this new look Charlotte team. But yeah, for a Charlotte team who's been pretty reliable for their games being high scoring goal fest, that you have like over 2.5 goals scored, it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of adjust to this new change.
This has nothing to do with anything. I want everybody to go to the Independence or this matchup on Flop Mob and just see the picture of Christian Jamie, because they took the exposure on his photo and just turned it all the way up. Like, it is, that's a lot.
That's what you love to hear. And by the way, if you are someone like me who has some real questions about the Independent setup, both of the goals in this game were literally just, what if we hit the ball real long to Christian Chaney up top and see what happens? And Chaney got 2 goals against a USL Championship defense that's been really good. So, hey, hope springs eternal.
You know, one thing Chaney said, he did the interview with Backstick Pod a while back, and he kind of mentioned that, you know, he's a big body. Everybody just assumes that he's just going to be someone who gets the ball, wins the ball in the air, brings it down, and maybe turn and shoot. But, you know, he fancies himself technically, and you should. If you're a good goal scorer, you fancy yourself to do everything. But it does feel like maybe the answer is just kind of bang the ball up top and just let him go to work, you know, let him do his thing. even without an Alvarez or without a Mendez, I still think there's enough to this team that can at least get enough goals to take them along, you know?
Yeah, with Sis and Dye and everyone else in that midfield, I really like Anthony Sorensen out on the wing. So there's potential there, and they're solid enough defensively and well drilled enough that they're going to be a tough out no matter what.
A couple other matchups that, or I'm just going to kind of read through some results. Stop me if you have anything interesting. Chattanooga wins on penalties because, of course, they do versus Forward Madison. Rhode Island wins 1-0.
7 draws in a row for Madison against USL 1 opposition.
Jeez.
I love that for them.
That's AFC Richmond levels of starting draws. Season 2.
Rhode Island, speaking of Draw Kings, wins 1-0 over Pittsburgh. They get immediate revenge. Fun. North Carolina takes down Richmond 1-0. Miami wins 3-2 over FC Naples. That was a fun matchup in of itself. Good to see the two top of the group teams just kind of go at it there. So that one's a fun win. Tampa Bay beats goodness gracious, South Georgia Tormenta 2-1. After Tormenta goes up early, they need late goals to win that one. I kind of want to stop on that one really fast because, John, you wrote about it in Backheeled. People should like, subscribe, check out Backheeled, read what you said about it, because you do ask the question. Also, just like, how did both teams manage to come out on bottom? This is insane. But, yeah, that's kind of what happened here.
And I went back and forth in writing that one, and out of my tiredness just decided, whatever, I'm going to be negative about the Rowdies again. There's just something about the mix at the back right now. And you look at the names, it's Wyke and Castellanos and Lasso and Guillen. Like, that's a lot of players you ought to trust. And something's just off. The communication, the marking, a lot of it for me derives from a lack of support in the defensive midfield and some space that's opening up because of that. But you look at the goal, that's the combination play between Bazzini and Vivas for Tormenta, yes. But it's a lack of somebody waving the hand and saying, I'm grabbing this guy and marking him and making sure he can't get on the end of a cross. And credit to Tampa Bay. I loved what they did with the wingbacks in this game. They ultimately came back and got the win. But it's all going to be for naught unless they solve the defensive errors.
Yeah,
and they have Louisville as their next match on the weekend, which is always that's going to be a concern for this Tampa Bay Rowdies team. But just knowing how Louisville is, that's going to be their usual. We'll get a 2-0 victory, and everyone will just kind of say, "Oh, that's Louisville."
Like I said, this is just making for Camp Lancaster gets a hat trick in his return against Tampa Bay because the narrative said so. FC Tulsa falls 2-1 to Birmingham despite being the better squad on the night. But Birmingham, awful resilience at One Oak. Let's see.
Real quick on that one. Catching some of the replay, how excited were you to see all of those long balls into Ronaldo Damas just running and doing his thing?
It's fun. It was just fun. That is, it was a little bit of what he did at Colorado Springs at times.
For sure. Go
long and he's outside of the box and he's just going to turn and shoot and just kind of do what he does. And it looked a lot like old Damas, and I think that that's a good thing. I think it's hard, and you mentioned on this another backfield thing of how to utilize Trejo and Damas together, and we all kind of thought it would work, but you also want to work the ball into Trejo, let him do his thing, but what does that do for Damas? Are you trying just to work the ball to him? Because if you bypass and say go long Damas, you're leaving Trejo out of it. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what Briggs does in that space in of itself. But it was really fun to watch. I closed my phone. Oh, Colorado Springs gets a bit of an upset win over El Paso. El Paso drops points. Marco Micheletto, it kind of had to be him to get the goal against El Paso, didn't it? We all kind of felt it happening. We already mentioned Monterey Bay versus Orange County. John, I'm just going to ask you, Phoenix versus New Mexico, 3-3. Phoenix wins. How was it there?
Incredible. Like, what a game for me to be at, honestly. very chippy and very physical throughout. I thought the tactical battle was fascinating. Phoenix kind of coming out and using Hope Avievu to man mark Getty and Zelalem. There are some layers to the defensive setup as well. And Dennis Sanchez figured out, okay, we're just going to create combinations out wide and work around that man marking, find a number of early chances. Later in the match, Phoenix kind of had to start going longer from the back because they just kept turning the ball over. These are two teams that have now met, I think, 3 times this season. It's a kind of a Loudon Louisville thing. So they know the kind of the plan A, B, and C. And the fact that you got to watch them try to find that extra level, figure out that edge was awesome. The penalties were unreal. Patrick Krakowski stops the first 3 that he faced, and you think, okay, sweet, game over. And then Phoenix starts choking. You can feel the nerves. Ultimately, they pull through. But yeah, awesome environment. And kudos to everyone at Phoenix who was super gracious having me in there. So yeah, good times.
Seeing Rakowski just kind of become penalty saver again. Like that's kind of what he made his name off of, was just being really good at saving penalties. And he's just kind of back to doing that. Really fun to see a guy who you thought his career was reserved to being a GK2, maybe a GK3. Granted, when you have Rocco Rios Novo in front of you, it's easy to figure out why you'd be a GK2. But Rakowski's taken most of his chances and might be the most interesting storyline going on in Phoenix right now is the resurgence of Rakowski.
Yeah, we got to talk to him in the post-game presser, and he is a fun guy to hear from because he's the embodiment of like German blunt answers to every single question. So yeah, the more Patrick Krakowski's success we get, the better.
Ryan?
No, just that it was a fun match to watch late night here on the East Coast as well. And glad that you had a good time at the game.
Sacramento kills Las Vegas because, of course, they did. Yeah. And then AV Alta win 2-2 via penalties versus Oakland Roots, which does see Gavin Glinton out the door and sees, and I'm going to mess up his name, Benny Philiber take his place. Not too often you get fired and a new hire all within roughly around 14 hours of each other. But it happened. Obviously, this was not just we're getting rid of Glinton right after AV Alta, even though it might appear that might have been the straw with how fast Benny was announced. That's that. I want to give AV Alta their flowers, of course, but they've been really good all year long. What do we think about this Oakland decision to get rid of Glinton?
The results just simply haven't been up to snuff for Oakland. They're in 11th place in the league right now. Their underlying numbers, the expected goals and goals against, are truly dismal. They've lost to lower division clubs 3 different times now, once in the Open and then against Spokane, in addition to Alta in the Jaegermeister Cup. That's just not what you wanted to see. Oakland came into this season talking up the potential of maybe we can go on and get a home playoff game. And they really put value on this moment in 2025 because it was the move to the Coliseum. It was that ability to get tens of thousands of people seeing the Oakland Roots play, and you want to put the product out that's going to win them over and keep them coming to these games. Is the responsibility fully on Glinton that it hasn't turned out? No. I think there were some really odd decisions in terms of how this team was constructed. Very dense on central defenders, tons of wingbacks, nothing in the midfield. They sell Johnny Rodriguez days before the season. There wasn't a vision for what this unit was going to look like in practice. And I think that's why you saw Glinton change the formation and change the style after about a month. Will Feilhaber be the guy who can lead the improvement? I think there are signs that point to a yes. A lot of experience for him with SKC2 and playing with younger sorts of players. That's valuable for a program like Oakland that has Project 510 and can leverage the younger talent. Feilhaber also comes into that changing room and he has a name. Like if you have followed American soccer for the past decade, 20 years, you respect the experiences that Feilhaber has had. Having watched a real little bit of his MLS Next Pro coaching tape, it seems like he's got a pretty positive style. What stood out was he really knows how to coach a defense and keep it organized, which I think is paramount for this Roots team. So yeah, I've been going on too long, but I think this is a fascinating situation on what's gone wrong and really the importance of this moment.
And I find it fascinating that their first match for a possible new manager bounce is coming up against an El Paso team who almost seemed kind of like a mirror image of what Oakland is going through right now. You had a team that was underperforming that made a midseason coaching hire to bring in a name that people either know from the coaching ranks or it's just people are familiar with within U.S. soccer. That El Paso, it took a little bit of time last season to try and get things started under Wilmer Cabrera, but by the end of the year, it was starting to click, and you see how this El Paso team looks like right now. That I do expect it to take some time for Feilhaber to have a opportunity to really kind of turn around and work with this Oakland team, but he's going into a very exciting market. He has the Coliseum to as his new stadium, and like we all mentioned that he has the U.S. men's national team kind of caps to his name. I was at least looking into it. Can you guys name the two other USL connections that have the same number of caps that Feilhaber has? They both have 40. So the number of caps they have is 44.
So
they are current players.
Juan Agudelo doesn't have that many.
Juan Agudelo, no.
For men's national team caps, they are current players in the men's national team squad, or at least have been called up within the last 2 years or so, have the same number of caps as Feilhaber.
Oh, current USMNT, so not like a current USL guy.
Oh,
boy.
I was saying they have USL connections.
Yeah. Tyler Adams.
Yep,
that's one.
The
other one is cheating. It's Timothy Weah with the Brooklyn.
That's a good one. I like that.
That's fine.
And the funny one throughout all of this is they all have the same number of caps as Greg Berhalter.
Let's go. GGG.
So I just want those out there because I want to be excited about Oakland, but when you look at the underlying stats, and again, hey, today's a full analytics day. Look at us go. When you look at the expected results in terms of the expected for and expected goals against, Oakland has the case of being the worst team in the league. And how much of that is Glinton? If I'm being really honest here, maybe Glinton should have been asked to move on in the offseason. He was an interim. Maybe it was time just to kind of cut ties and let go and just try to start the new era. They bring in players. They bring back Green. They have Hackshaw, who's good. We all love Camden Riley on this pod. This is a Camden Riley podcast. Sinisterra is a good player. Prentice has been really good. We all know about Panos. But those players, and they just bring in Maury Donor, but he was brought in a couple of days before Clinton was fired. What was he supposed to do? They didn't surround him with talent either. There are talented players, but realistically, with the squad he has today, what changes could he have made to even get them close to a playoff spot? Because I don't see much.
You're talking to the wrong person in a certain sense, because I picked Oakland to finish last in the West. Like, I didn't believe in the vision for this team. But you think about those talented players you named, 5 of them are center backs. Like, if you're looking at an issue for this team, they got a lot of defenders who haven't connected at all, clearly weren't getting the direction that they needed to be organized. To me, that feels like the fault. Like, if you're leaning into, okay, we've got a lot of talent at the back, we are going to figure it out with Panos running the strings in the middle, and then some speed up top with Prentice and Sinisterra and Peter Wilson. If that was the vision and that was the measuring stick for what Glinton was trying to do, then he hasn't measured up. Like, it's as simple as that for me.
With the number of talent they have at the back, this is still the Oakland team that has conceded the most goals in league play right now in the championship.
Yeah. All right. there's all that. Was there anything from the Jaegermeister that we wanted to bring up that we weren't really able to? Are we good? Are we okay? How about any other USL thoughts? Do we happen to have anything?
Las Vegas hasn't scored in the amount of time it's taken to watch both recent Captain America films, Civil War and Brave New World.
Ryan, you had a Fantasia stat in the latest newsletter that got me good. I will say that.
That was one that I did actually have to start kind of. I wanted to mix up my filmography, and I had to like really reach for what other like Disney film could I pull from.
Well, the trick with Fantasia is that it's like 70 minutes long, so it's like a shorty comparatively to some of these. Yeah.
I love Fantasia. By the way, both of the Fantasias, I absolutely love them. They are so good. Was there any other USL thoughts for you guys?
I guess I'll use this as a chance to plug, because pertinent to Oliver Gage being on the show today, I'll have a piece about the kind of the whole Loudon thing this season where I talked to Ryan Martin and Tommy McCabe, coming out shortly.
Awesome. Yeah, check that out for sure. Normally we do predictions here. This is an hour and a half pod. We can post those later. Let's just call it a day. Have a great time. So how about some final thoughts for the night, Ryan?
Yeah, I guess this is where I'll at least say that I have a bone to pick with my local AMC theaters. I live near 3 AMC movie theaters here in Charlotte. They're all within a reasonable driving distance. None of them are showing the Phoenician Scheme. The nearest one is either in South Carolina, or I have to go like an hour away to watch it. And guys, figure it out. I don't know who I need to talk to, but like put it at one of my nearer AMC theaters, please.
They do. Wes Anderson specifically does this thing where he like wants his movies to be released at this set of 6 indie theaters all across the country. I happen to live by one, and I've just not had a chance to go yet. But yeah, super excited at some point this week to pull the trigger.
John?
Yeah, man, I just keep watching Mission Impossible movies. Like I've been kind of brain
I see it from your letterbox.
Yeah, yeah, I've been like very tired and overworked as of late, and I just need dumb entertainment. And man, Tom Cruise is giving it to me.
I love that. Let's see. I had a couple of fun things. Let's see. Oh, tomorrow. I still haven't decided. I say I haven't decided. I'm almost certainly going to go to the Rickwood Classic, which is the baseball game that's at Rickwood Field. They did it last year with MLB, oldest ballpark in America. Well, the Birmingham Barons and now the Rocket City Trash Pandas, they are going to be playing against each other there. I did it when Rickwood turned 100. I haven't been back in, I mean, gosh, it's been almost 10 years now, I guess. It's been a long time. So I'm very excited about that. Me and my wife went to Huntsville on Saturday, I think. And my thing to do at baseball games is to fill out the scorecard like I am filling it out as it happens. And I had 3 separate people ask me, like, do you do this for your job? And I said, no. They're like, that's so sick. We love that for you. So, like,
love it.
There's that. You know what? No, I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm going to be a good person.
Wow.
I want to be a good human being. That's who I am.
I have a slight feeling I know where that was going, but I'll hold
probably.
That.
But
yeah.
Hey, and if the listeners do too, you know, and if you don't, that's okay because it should stay that way. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. We do appreciate you. It's a long show. Go give Oliver a lot of love. Lots of good stuff, lots of good content out there to consume. And thank you for choosing our show to consume. Thank you all so much. And here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.